Merhaba. I'm sorry, my Turkish is not the best. I'm still learning. No, warm welcome to all of you as well on behalf of the London Stock Exchange. Thank you to Arda and sort of the fantastic team for sort of the invitation and this fantastic event. My name is Axel Kalinowski. I'm at the London Stock Exchange. I'm responsible for our activities in Central Europe, Eastern Europe, and Southern Europe, which includes Turkey, which is why I'm here today. And I love being in Istanbul. I've been many, many times. Over the next few minutes, I want to give you a very brief rundown how we work with technology companies. I.e., the London Stock Exchange, as many of you will know, is a place where companies meet capital. But what does it mean? What are we doing as London Stock Exchange to connect the two and enable technology companies to grow? Before I start, let me give you a quick sort of snapshot of who the London Stock Exchange is today. Many of you will have an idea, but the organization has been evolving quite a lot, even since I joined. Today, the London Stock Exchange is a global financial infrastructure business. So it is a business with 24,000 employees. We have offices in 70 countries across the world, one of them here in Turkey, where we've been, in fact, for over 30 years. We serve over 400 corporates, particularly in the area of data and analytics. So Turkey is very important for us. I refer to the London Stock Exchange as a 300-year-old fintech company because technology is at the very heart of what we are doing. We are using technology to bring investors and companies together. Some of you may be aware that 2 years ago we entered into a strategic partnership with Microsoft. So Microsoft owns about 4.2% in the London Stock Exchange, and we're developing technological products together. The London Stock Exchange is listed on the London Stock Exchange, so it's a publicly held company. Anyone can buy and sell shares. Even though we are 300 years old, it's a very dynamic organization, so I'll give you an idea. So when I joined, the share price of the London Stock Exchange was around £6. As of this morning, the share price is about £105. So that's how dynamic the organization is growing, just to give you an idea. Okay, now let's go to the main bit, which is what are we doing in terms of capital raising activity? What is going on? Here is a quick snapshot of the European landscape, so the top 10 European public markets in terms of equity raising activity. And you will see, even though it's been a challenging year, there's been quite a lot of activities. So you'll see London sort of the #1 spot. It's about 3.3 times to the second placed exchange. So London alone accounts for around 1/3 of all capital raising activity across the entire Europe. So you see how important London is as not just as a UK capital market, but as a global sort of capital market. So when we think about London, think of London as a doorway, as a gateway to global capital. London is a bit different to Borsa Istanbul in the sense that London is a very institutional market, so over 90% of investors are institutions from the US, from Europe, from Middle East, etc., from across the world. And Borsa is very successful in its domestic market in terms of attracting retail investors. So the two markets are structurally quite different. We are quite unique in the global landscape in that we are very international. So there are many big exchange groups around the world. So whether we look at New York, NASDAQ, et cetera, or we look at the Asian markets like in Shanghai or Hong Kong or Tokyo, what's different to London is that London is extremely international. So London is UK as an economy is not as big as China or the US, but it has the same kind of, or even bigger sort of capacity for capital. So that capital needs to be going somewhere. It cannot go entirely into the domestic sort of economy. So it's going and looking for opportunities across the world. And that's part of the reason why here's a snapshot of around 150 European companies, so pure European companies that are currently listed on the London Stock Exchange. you'll see that they represent a market value of around 747 billion. So it's a big group, and in total across the world we have over 700 international, i.e. foreign companies currently listed on the London Stock Exchange. So I think that's a big differentiator and very important point, because essentially no matter where you're from the world, including from Turkey, you go to London, everyone is look at you like it's the place to be. No one is going to say, why are you not a UK business, for instance? So that's also the reason why we have quite deep engagement with Turkish issuers across the spectrum. We have a couple of companies that are listed, like Domino's Pizza, Global Ports, from the financial services sector as well. So we have quite an active sort of set of clients from Turkey, also on debt markets. In total, about $18 billion in terms of capital has been raised by Turkish companies in London. And I think the time is right for technology companies to also sort of make use of what's possible in London. So we have seen more traditional sectors, whether it's energy, whether it's the banking sector, whether it's the municipality of Istanbul, for instance, which is also a client of ours. But I think the technology companies in Turkey have come now a long way, and many of them are very mature and are really ready to attract global institutional investors. Innovation is at the core of what we're doing, and part of the reason why I'm here today is not just to talk about stock exchange and public markets, because that's part of the activity, but another important element that I wanted to touch on is what we're doing in innovating. So we have two quite important projects in private markets. So companies that are still private may not be looking to go public ever, or an IPO may be still much further down the line. We are working with them as well. So we've got two private market solutions. One of them is already up and running, and one of them is still in development and will be up and running next year. The first one is a strategic partnership which we have with a fintech company called Flow, where we work young, sort of startup, but sort of already established startup companies to raise capital. So anything from 1 to 10 million US dollars, let's say. Flow is a platform that will connect you to other institutional investors, whether that's other venture capital investors, whether it's other sort of institutional investors. So Flow is a technology platform that works with those younger, high-growth technology companies. So that's the first bit. So we're trying to put in all the pieces of the puzzle. How do we create funding solutions for technology companies? So Flow is at the very early stage. Then we have something very new, which will be the first of its kind globally. It's a hybrid market, which basically will mean that as a private company, you can decide to go public 1 day in a year, 2 days in a year. The company decides. So you become public. You have an exchange of existing shareholders selling down their shares, could be management having some liquidity, employees having some liquidity event, and institutional investors sort of coming into the company, investing into the company, and then the next day the books close and the company continues as a private business. So it will be a hybrid platform which will be using our auctioning technology that we use in public markets, but we will use it in a private market context. So it will be a hybrid solution. So that's going to be a very interesting solution for companies that are still private, but want to attract some institutional money. So that will be probably up and running mid next year. And then we have public markets as well. So many of you may know we have a high growth market dedicated for high growth businesses called AIM, which is basically a bit like a venture capital market, where young, ambitious companies can raise money from public markets. And public markets, as I mentioned earlier, are a bit different in the UK in that they attract institutional investors. So most of the investors on this public market are still institutional investors that the big multinational companies also attract. So that market is called AIM and has about 800 companies listed currently on it. So those are the three different ways. 2 of them in the private markets, and 1 is our public market. So technology, more specifically, what's been going on in the technology space? Quite a lot has been going on. So we have had over 50 IPOs in the last, technology IPOs in the last 3 to 4 years, and the range is quite wide. So we had companies raised between 2 million to pretty much 2 billion. So just to give you a range, because sometimes I get asked how big do I need to be able to consider sort of public markets in London. Well, that's the range. So we had companies raise 2 million up to 2 billion. So it's a broad range, and you can see sort of a couple of names here. Raspberry Pi, many of you will probably know, sort of was a very successful London IPO that we had this summer. Has been trading up now about 40%, so it's been very well received. It's been priced at the top end of the range, so that was a fantastic technology IPO. And there will be more coming. Generally, momentum is very positive in London. A number of companies are sort of very publicly communicating about their experience. Yeah, there's great momentum. Obviously, as a technology company, I know this because I meet a lot of technology companies and discuss sort of the various options. The dream is always to go to the US, which is a tricky sort of undertaking. The answer may be right for some companies, but for many companies it is not. And I'll give you here an example of UK companies that went to the US. So they were also technology companies in most cases, and they dreamed about the US market. And unfortunately, the experience has not been the best. So you can see here that the average performance of those UK businesses that went to the US is down 82.5%. And I could put up the same chart about European companies go to the US. And the reason is that there's a big difference between how foreign international companies perform after the IPO. So this is the middle chart, pointing towards the left, and how US companies perform. So you can see there's a huge difference. And the reason is, even though the US is a huge market, it's a very domestic market. So most of the ecosystem is a US-focused ecosystem. So unless you go there as a US company, you move there, you basically appear like a US company, I would be very sort of cautious and mindful about doing that, because the experience, as history shows, has been very mixed for many companies. So yeah, that brings me to the end of the presentation. Just wanted to sort of extend open arms to all of you. London, the momentum in London is very positive. We are undergoing the biggest reform of the last 40 years. The relationship between the UK and Turkey is excellent. There is a lot of sort of talk about sort of picking up a sort of bilateral trade agreements. The UK is already a very important market, like the fourth largest market, export market for Turkey. And yeah, in terms of capital, London is a place essentially where opportunity meets capital. And if one thing Turkey is not short of, it's opportunity. So with that said, please feel free to reach out to us, and very happy to have a conversation with you. Thank you very much.